Hi, everybody. Pat Miller, Gabby Gourmet, and we are so excited for episode 1 of Stir Crazy in the Kitchen. And if you're anything like me, you're stir crazy and not a fan of big, elaborate, but Roth Living is one of my favorite places in the world. And Chef Ben Davis is just one of the best chefs ever. And he is our star, while LYNNE THIELEN of Roth Living and I, we may be hosts, but we're
Yes.
also students. So
Right.
let's introduce the star. Hey, Ben.
Hi, Pat. How are you, Gabby?
I am fine, and your recipe sounds awesome. So tell
Well,
us, go.
Thanksgiving is one of those things that's my favorite, my absolute favorite holiday to ever, that come around every year. It's my favorite because we talk about how Thanksgiving is so much about getting your family together, but we want to be honest here. It's really about the food, which is why we love Thanksgiving so much. Is because it's really a holiday that's about food. So
it's my favorite holiday too.
It's probably the only American holiday that's about food. That's for sure.
Okay. No, it's just always been my favorite. No presents required, just a great meal.
Just show up with an appetite and be ready to go. And it's one of those days where I just love spending the whole day in the kitchen, doing all the preparations. And now I have grown adult children, and they insist that they will come back to Thanksgiving as long as I am upright and cooking Thanksgiving. They have threatened to come back and spend it at my home. So that's very exciting too. So I always look forward to it. The turkey is great, but the sides are, I think, what really make it interesting. And so today what we're going to do is do a very quick side, good for making ahead so that you can,
good.
Get a little bit ahead the day before, the night before, prepare this, put it into your refrigerator, and then the following day, all you have to do is bake it. So it's a very simple sort of spinach and mushroom gratin, very easy to make, nothing too exotic unless you include dried mushrooms as being an exotic ingredient, but it is one of those things that has lots of flavor with not a lot of ingredients. So it's it's just an easy thing to make. And you don't need, like I said, you don't need that many fancy ingredients for this. So obviously lots of fresh spinach. And I'm a big proponent of fresh spinach with this. I mean, you could easily substitute the frozen stuff, but honestly, I think that stuff has a very different flavor. So I like to go with the fresh spinach whenever I can. And it just requires one extra step in terms of the preparation. So let's get started. Go ahead.
You cook.
So let's get started. We're going to start by just sauteing some mushrooms, and there's a quick little thing to remember when you're going to cook mushrooms, to saute it, or whether you're putting them into a dish or you're just going to saute them as a garnish for something. We're going to start with a little bit of unsalted butter and then just a drop of extra virgin olive oil in the pan. Now we've got two kinds of mushrooms that we're going to use. We're going to use the brown cremini mushrooms, or if you can't find those, you can just use a white button mushroom.
Good.
Slice them about, a quarter, an eighth to a quarter of an inch thick. And then the other mushroom that we've got is a porcini mushroom. Now, you're probably not going to find fresh porcini mushrooms around too often, but you can certainly get them dried. And all I've done is soak them in boiling water for about a half an hour. And then I put them into this strainer. Now you want to save that liquid, right? Because you can put that liquid the next time you make soup or stew or something like that. You can just pop that into.
Can I buy those dried mushrooms in any store?
You bet. You should be able to find, dried porcini mushrooms at most nice markets. Certainly at specialty markets, they'll be available. But you can find those. So what we're going to start off, we've got our temperature now. We've got the burner on pretty high. So we're starting our mushrooms on a high temperature. We're going to add the soaked porcinis as well. Now here's the real trick for sauteing, mushrooms is that keep them on high and let them get started in the pan. Let them start to sizzle. Your butter's melted. It's gotten nice and hot. We're going to let them, now don't stir them, right?
That's
just
my next question. Okay.
Don't stir, just let them sit in the pan, let them cook, and don't move them. Remember, mushrooms are about 90-some% water. So that if I stir them too much, they start to release that water, and I end up with a steamed mushroom as opposed to a sauteed mushroom. So just let them cook, and don't worry, very hard to burn water, although I'm sure there are folks who think, oh yeah, I can burn water, right?
I can do it.
Yeah, me too, but why do I smell butter in my house?
So exactly. So let's just let them sit, get them to where they're sizzling nicely and they're cooking. You're seeing the steam come off the pan. Just let them sizzle nicely until they're, they're going pretty good. And then you're going to turn them down to a fairly low flame. And all you're trying to do is evaporate as much of that moisture, right, before you start to brown them, right? Because it's obviously you can't brown water either, but you want to just let these saute, get them nice and started, and then once they're done that, we're going to turn the heat down nice and low and just let them cook. This allows you to let them go and not really worry about them very much. Just let them cook. So,
but they're browning on the bottom, right?
Exactly. They're getting some color on the bottom, right? But what we're really trying to do is evaporate a lot of that water out of there, so we have more of the mushroom flavor captured and less of the kind of softness, and we don't want that extra water into our gratin. All right. Okay, so while that's happening, right, you can start this while that's happening. I'm going to shock everybody and look. And so this recipe calls for 3 pounds of spinach. Now, everybody's thinking to themselves, holy cow, look at the size of that bowl. It's just huge. How am I going to cook all that spinach? Well, just get yourself a really large pot, or you can do it in batches in a smaller pot. But the goal here is simply to wilt the spinach, right? You just want to soften it. You don't need to get it cooked down or anything. Like, you just want to get it soft. So what I've done is I've rinsed the spinach under some cold water, so it's still got all that moisture clinging to the leaves of the spinach. Now the pot is I've already heated it up just a little bit. We just want to get that start, and you want to literally just dump it all in.
There's no water in the pot.
There's no water in the pot. The only water we're going to use is the water that's clinging to the leaves of the spinach, right? And that's the water that's been naturally occurring in the spinach. Now, I know this looks like a huge process. So if you can do this again, it's one of those things you can do it ahead, but I really think it's worth it. So once you've got it all in the pot, put the lid on it and just let it, you can keep it on a pretty good flame and just get it to soften and just to wilt down. And you'll probably just want to stir it with a pair of tongs, right? So once we get it started, we're just going to give it a quick stir, and then we're going to drain it off, and then we're going to squeeze it out, because that's really the important part here. Is we want to get rid of that excess moisture in our spinach so it bakes up so nicely, right?
I think
and
the
all
reason.
The while,
go ahead. I think
all the while our
people
mushrooms are cooking.
to buy frozen is they look at the amount of spinach they need to make it cook down.
Right, exactly. But
it's much better.
And the nice part is now, with all these convenience things we have in the grocery store where you can get pre-cleaned spinach, the big boxes of it, right? Saves you a lot of time picking the leaves of the spinach and washing it all nicely pre-washed. So you can see a little bit of steam coming out from our pot, just a tiny bit. That's what we're looking for. There's the steam. That's what we're just going for. We're just going for that wilt, right? So just give it a quick stir just to get it all to that same texture. You can see this is pretty fast, right? It's taking probably about a minute or so just to get it wilted down.
You can see how much less there is already.
Right, right, because when I put it in the pot, you could see it.
Yeah.
And did you say, Chef, can you kind of buy a 3 pound bag?
Well, the biggest I've seen in the markets are about 1 pound boxes, right? So you can get those big 1 pound boxes, right? Just grab three of those. Yep. So there we go. We're just about there. We've just about wilted our spinach down all the way.
That takes less time than cooking frozen.
It does. It's it's probably faster to do this than it is to defrost frozen spinach.
Right.
And as I said, the flavor I think is so much better. Now don't worry as you're stirring it. Do not worry about breaking up any of the leaves or anything like that, because that's just fine. You're not trying to keep it. All right. So now we can turn our heat off on the spinach. All right. Now we're going to just drain that through a colander just to get rid of the initial moisture. Right. Okay.
We can't see.
You want to try. Right. I'm just going to show everybody what to do. You just want to drain it off. You don't need to chill it or anything like that. Just get it completely drained. Now, here's the fun part. Okay, you want to get yourself a nice clean linen towels are best. Although if you don't have a linen towel, just do the best. You can use cheesecloth. Just you may have to quintuple it just so it's nice and strong. We're going to lay that out middle of our cutting surface, and we're just going to take all of that spinach. So you remember how much spinach I had at the beginning. So here's what we have. We're going to place the spinach after it's been
Poor
cooked.
spinach.
Right in
sad spinach.
Yeah.
right into the middle of our towel.
Okay,
right? Just like that.
Chef, I assume
Yeah.
you don't use paper towels for this.
No, you don't want to use a paper towel, and you're about to
just be
see
sure
why.
to tell
Okay.
people this.
Yeah, don't want to use paper. You want a nice linen towel is the best way to go. You can use terry cloth, but again, you run the risk of maybe getting a little bit of the towel in your spinach. So here we've got all the water. We're going to just take the spinach and we're going to twist our towel and squeeze out as much of that liquid as possible. Now, right now it's a little hot. So if you want to let it, cool off a little bit, that's just fine. You can let the spinach cool down, for a little while before you squeeze it out. You don't have to do this right away because you've got a little bit of time for your mushrooms to still cook. And if you can see on the stove too, right? There's just a little bit less steam coming off of our mushrooms. So that's good. We're getting rid of that excess moisture. That's really what we're going for.
So
Again,
that's been going on about 10, 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's probably going to take you anywhere between 10 and probably 18 minutes to get them nice and cooked and get as much of that liquid out of there. So now we squeezed out a lot of that water, and I want to show you how much it is left. So here's what we have left. Just that little ball of spinach is all we've got left from that big giant bowl.
That big old bowl.
We're left with a softball-sized clump of freshly steamed wilted spinach. So just take your knife and just run it through in one direction, and then just kind of spin it and just run it in the opposite direction. You're just roughly chopping it. You don't need to get it really uniform. You just want to get it broken up so you don't have really whole big giant leaves in there. But that's all you need to do for your spinach is just get it just like that, and it's ready to go. And like I said, it's so much better than having frozen spinach, but that's completely up to you. If you want to substitute frozen spinach, I can't even tell you how much you need, but this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood, maybe a pound total weight. So, okay, so our mushrooms are still cooking. Let's make up the base for our gratin. This is really easy to do. You just need a couple of whole eggs, right? And just, boom, we're gonna pop our
That's a
eggs.
professional way to crack them.
That's right, just bang them
I just
together.
did it his way, the second way.
Yeah.
Right, and then we're gonna add some heavy cream. It's Thanksgiving, right? So what would Thanksgiving be if we didn't have a lot of fat in our Thanksgiving? So we gotta have a little heavy, nice heavy cream in there, right?
Yes.
So we
I'm
got
a
our
big fan
eggs
of
and
no low calorie.
no,
nothing
no
is low
low
cal.
calorie, no low calorie dishes. So just give that a quick mix. Just stir it so it's nice and homogeneous. And then we're gonna season this up with a little bit of grated nutmeg.
Ooh.
And then we're gonna give it a couple pinches of kosher salt. And then you wanna make sure you give it a pretty good heavy grinding of freshly ground black pepper. I think that's gonna go so nicely with our spinach. All right, so we've got the basis for our custard there. So let's come back and have a look at our mushrooms as they're cooking here. And you can see they're still sizzling, but now we're not seeing a lot of steam coming off of them. So now we're gonna go into the last portion of the cooking process. So we've gone high at the beginning and low for this middle part. Now we're gonna turn it up again, go back to high. So if you just think high, low, high, that's a great way to saute your mushrooms to get a beautiful sauteed texture and color and all that flavor that builds up, right? So now we've got that sizzling up a little bit. We're gonna add our seasoning ingredients. So we've got some minced shallot, just about a half a shallot minced nicely. And then we've got about 3 cloves of garlic, finely minced, and we're gonna put that on there as well.
Ooh.
And now, at long last, we're going to stir, right? We're going to actually stir our mushrooms, right? And yeah, you can see that we're already developing some beautiful color on some of the bottom of our mushrooms, and that's where all that flavor comes from. So just give it a quick flip to toss it with the garlic and the shallot. And now you can see we've got a lot of beautiful color, and then we're getting our heat back up. So now we're going to give it a little time just to get that flavor developed just a bit more. We're going to add a little tiny bit of seasoning. Remember, it's really important to season as you go, right? Don't just wait till the end to season.
And that was salt again?
A little bit of kosher salt, a little bit of black pepper, not too much on both counts, right? Just enough to give our mushrooms a little bit of flavor. So now we've got our custard is waiting. So we're going to add the spinach to the custard. So there goes all of our beautifully wilted spinach, chopped, right? Fresh, bright and green, doesn't have that kind of old spinach color to it as well. Now our mushrooms are developing lots of flavor.
Those at home do not have to toss that way.
No, you don't have to toss it this way. If you don't want to use it, just use your spoon, use your wooden utensil, your spatula, just to get it mixed nicely. But again, at this point, the mushrooms are fully cooked, so it depends on just how dark you want to make them, right? So you can let them go, a couple few minutes at the most, right?
And it looks like the butter is absorbed by now.
It is. Can you see that there's really no fat left in the pan, right?
Okay,
You can see that nicely. So there we go. We've got our mushrooms all ready to go. So now the mushrooms go on top of the spinach. And then the last ingredient, of course, is we've got to have really nice grated Parmesan Reggiano cheese. This is a good place not to skimp. Get the really good Italian Parmesan and just put that on.
That's my favorite part.
Right? And then now you're just going to stir it so it looks nice and homogeneous. So you can see this is the point which the day before you can do everything up to this point, right? Get it all mixed together so it's all combined and ready to go. And we've got just a 9 by 13 baking dish. It can be ceramic, it can be glass, it can be metal, whatever you want, just something decorative for the table as well, because it'll look nice. So now we've blended everything together. We're just going to pour it into our pan. So this is the point. You take it to this point and you wrap it with plastic. You put it in your refrigerator. You let it sit overnight. Then the following morning or the following day, depending on when you want to eat your Thanksgiving meal, you can come out, you can preheat your oven, 350 degrees, right, in the bake setting. Try to keep a rack in that middle to upper third of the oven. You don't need it too low in the oven, but that middle.
Thank you. That's a good hint.
Probably good for this. And then because you can never have too much Parmesan, I always like to put a little bit more on top, right? And now you're ready to go. You can either bake it right away. It'll bake for about, about 30 to 35 minutes at 350. If you're ready to bake it right away, if you want to let it sit overnight and refrigerate, it may take another extra 5 or 6 minutes just to finish baking it. But again, 350 in the oven. Just pop it in there and let it bake.
I'm ready to
just let it go. And then you're going to, and then you're just going to let it sit on your countertop for about, 5 minutes before you serve it. So just let it rest, let everything come together, cool down a little bit. But it's really a wonderful side dish to go along with whatever you decide to serve for Thanksgiving. So whether you're doing a traditional Thanksgiving with the turkey, or maybe you're more likely to have serve ham or even a roast of some kind, then you can certainly serve this alongside any of those things, right? So again, about half an hour, 40 minutes at most in the oven. Grab my towel. And of course, with the magic of television, we have one all ready to go. That was for you, Pat. We're sending it over.
Yes.
DoorDash is coming any minute, and they're going to pick it up and send it over. So.
Bring it on over to you.
It certainly sounds better than green beans with canned onion rings.
Right. Cream of mushrooms.
Yeah.
I certainly understand the allure of a traditional you know, and memory that comes with Thanksgiving
this
and all
looks
those things.
so good.
But this is nice and fresh, again, with your fresh spinach and all that wonderful Parmesan. And then however you want to put the mushrooms in there, or you can omit the mushrooms altogether if you have people in your family that are just not big mushroom fans. And I know there are the people out there that are like that. You could omit the mushrooms entirely and just do the recipe without the mushrooms at all, and that would be just fine. And you just have a beautiful spinach gratin.
Chef Ben, what a fabulous beginning. I am so hungry. I am ready to just go right now. This is only the first week, the first episode, and all the recipes as the weeks go on will be up on StirCrazyInTheKitchen.com. You have to hit subscribe, and then no charges, but then you will get the recipes every week. And Chef Ben will be here with new things every week. And thank you, Roth Living, too, for making.
You're welcome.
So let's
Absolutely.
say, love you all. Goodbye. And next week, what do we have?
Next week, we're doing another little Thanksgiving, so we're leading up to the holiday. So we'll get this out right before the holiday, but it's just another take on a sweet potato.
You know,
I'm not a big.
I never recorded this. It didn't hit. I hit
Oh, no.
record and it didn't record. Oh, yes, it did. Go ahead.
I'm like, it says recording on my side.
Okay, now go. To everybody who's listening, it did record. It just left my computer. Oh,
But next week, we're going to do a little take on another sweet potato dish that you can prepare if you're tired of little baby marshmallows on top of your sweet potato. We're going to do a little take on a creme brulee with a sweet potato, but it's certainly not a dessert, although it may be sweet enough to be one.
it was the best sounding thing I've ever heard. I am addicted to sweet potatoes. So,
Oh, that's not a bad thing to be addicted to. So.
but I have to wait till next week. Now I want spinach. Everybody, be well. See you next week. Chef, you are divine. Lynn, of course, we love you. See
Thank
you
you.
all.
All right, Gabby.
Stir
See you next week.
Crazy in the Kitchen. Bye-bye.
All right.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.